The obsidian palace hung in space like a dark jewel against the velvet backdrop of stars. From its crystalline observation deck, Emperor Orion gazed upon his vast dominion. Thousands of planets, countless stars, all bound by his immortal will for millennia. The Eighth Galactic Era was reaching its zenith, Earth long forgotten, more than 5,000 light-years distant from the heart of his empire. Orion stood motionless, his tall figure draped in ceremonial robes that seemed to absorb starlight rather than reflect it. His face, eternally youthful, yet impossibly ancient, showed no emotion as the celestial bodies rotated slowly in their cosmic dance before him. Time had become meaningless to him, a luxury afforded only to the truly immortal. "Your Eternal Majesty," came a reverent voice behind him. "The memorial ceremony awaits your presence." Without turning, Orion acknowledged his chamberlain with the slightest nod. The annual commemoration of fallen soldiers, a tradition he maintained despite its growing irrelevance. What was death to one who had conquered it? Still, the ritual served its purpose in maintaining imperial cohesion across the galaxies. "Prepare my transport," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of ages. The Celestis transit station hummed with activity as officials and dignitaries from 100 worlds gathered for the solemn occasion. Orion's arrival silenced the assembly instantly, thousands of beings bowing in perfect unison. The ceremony began with practiced precision, speeches exalting sacrifice, holographic displays of historic battles, the ritualistic lighting of eternal flames on each represented world. It was during the final tribute, as the gathered masses observed a moment of silence, that Orion first heard it, faint and distant, like a whisper from another time. A melody, simple yet hauntingly beautiful, drifted through the vast chamber. A lullaby? Something stirred within the Emperor's ancient consciousness, a flicker of recognition so distant he couldn't place it. For the first time in centuries, Orion felt disoriented, his eternal composure momentarily shaken. "Your Majesty?" His personal guard, Lyra, noticed his unusual rigidity. "Is something amiss?" Orion composed himself with practiced ease. "Continue the ceremony," he commanded, though inwardly, the melody echoed, refusing to fade. That night, in his private chambers within the Obsidian Palace, Orion summoned his Council of Immortality, 12 beings who had served him since the beginning of his eternal reign. There was a melody today, he began without preamble. Ancient, unfamiliar, yet... He hesitated, unused to uncertainty. "I wish to know its origin." The council exchanged glances, a silent communication born of millennia of service. "A melody, eternal one," spoke Councillor Vex, the oldest among them. "What manner of melody would disturb your contemplation?" "A lullaby," replied Orion, the word feeling strange on his lips. Simple, haunting. Silence fell across the chamber. Finally, Councillor Seraphine spoke, her voice careful. "Lullabies belong to mortal civilizations, your eternity. Songs to comfort children in darkness, to ease them towards sleep, concepts foreign to our immortal existence. Nevertheless," Orion's voice hardened, "I wish to know its source. Deploy the sound archivists. Search every record from every world." As the council departed to fulfill his command, Orion returned to the observation deck. Stars burned and died in the distance, a reminder of the impermanence he had transcended. Yet the melody persisted in his mind, stirring something long dormant. For the first time in eons, Emperor Orion dreamed. Within days, the palace became a center of frantic activity. Sound archivists scoured ancient databases, historians examined forgotten cultural records, and intelligence officers questioned attendees of the memorial ceremony. Meanwhile, reports arrived of unusual disturbances throughout the empire, minor rebellions on outer worlds, murmurings of discontent among previously loyal vassals. "They sense weakness," warned Councillor Vex during an emergency session. "The vassals always do. Your preoccupation with this music has not gone unnoticed." "The Eternal Emperor does not experience weakness," countered Councillor Seraphine, though her voice lacked conviction. Orion silenced them with a gesture. What have the archivists discovered? A nervous archivist stepped forward, clutching a translucent data sphere. Eternal One, we have found a partial match. The melody shares compositional elements with a recording from the extinct Vidranian civilization. Vidranians? Orion's interest sharpened. They perished during the Fifth Galactic Era. Yes, your eternity. Long before your ascension. They were known for their musical sophistication. This particular piece appears to be a ceremonial lullaby, though its complete form was lost when their star went supernova. I want everything on the Vidranian civilization, Orion commanded. Every fragment, every mention in historical texts. The council chamber divided into hushed factions as Orion departed. Some counselors argued for suppressing all information about the melody, fearing its unknown effect on the emperor. Others, fascinated by this rare display of imperial curiosity, advocated for deeper investigation. Neither faction anticipated how quickly events would unfold. That night, Orion's dreams intensified. The lullaby played continuously, accompanied by images he couldn't comprehend. A blue sky, small hands reaching toward twinkling lights, a gentle voice singing words he almost understood. He woke with an unfamiliar sensation, moisture on his face. Touching his cheek, the immortal emperor discovered tears. Meanwhile, across the galaxies, the empire began to fracture. The alliance of vassal planets, sensing disturbance at the imperial core, convened an unauthorized assembly. Rumors spread of the emperor's faltering immortality, of ancient powers reawakening. On the frontier world of Vedra, where ruins of the extinct civilization still stood, planetary governor Malus declared independence. The time of eternal tyranny approaches its end, her broadcast proclaimed, the lullaby of awakening has begun. Lyra, the emperor's loyal guard commander, brought news of the rebellion to Orion personally. Your eternity, Vedra has raised arms against the empire. Governor Malus speaks of lullabies and awakening. This cannot be coincidence. Orion, who had been studying Vidranian artifacts for days without rest, looked up with uncharacteristic weariness. Prepare my warship. We will crush this rebellion personally. Is that wise, your eternity? Lyra questioned, surprising herself with her boldness. The council advises sending the imperial fleet while you remain secure in the palace. The council does not rule, Orion stated flatly, and I would see these Vidranian ruins with my own eyes. As preparations for departure began, Orion received an unexpected visitor, Eowyn, the empire's foremost collector of ancient sounds. The small, hunched figure bowed deeply as he entered the emperor's private study. Forgive the intrusion, Eternal One. Eowyn began, his voice melodious even in speech. I believe I have found something of interest to your current inquiry. From within his robes, Eowyn produced a small crystalline cube that glowed with a soft inner light. This contains the only complete recording of Vidranian music in existence, a lullaby, preserved by chance when a research vessel left Vedra shortly before its civilization's collapse. Orion stared at the cube, an unfamiliar tension building within him. Play it! The melody that filled the chamber was identical to the one haunting his dreams, but complete, rich with harmonies he hadn't heard before. As the lullaby continued, the lyrics became clear, not in Vidranian as expected, but in an even more ancient tongue, one that Orion somehow understood. Sleep, my child, in starlight's embrace. Remember who you were before eternal days. Though galaxies may bow to your command, you began as all do, with small and mortal hands. Orion staggered, gripping his throne for support. Fragments of memory assaulted him, a childhood he couldn't recall, a past he had buried beneath millennia of immortality. Where did you find this? He demanded of Eowyn. The sound collector's eyes widened at the Emperor's reaction. From a private collection on Nebula 4, Your Eternity, the owner claimed it was passed down through generations, originally salvaged from Earth itself. Earth? The word felt like fire on Orion's tongue. Impossible. Earth was destroyed before. Before your ascension? Eowyn finished carefully. That is the official history. Yes, but some scholars suggest otherwise. Before Orion could respond, Lyra entered urgently. Your eternity. We must depart immediately. Vedra's rebellion spreads to neighboring systems. With the lullaby still echoing in his chambers, Emperor Orion departed for war. The crystalline cube secured within his imperial robes. The imperial warship Eternal Dominion emerged from hyperspace above Vedra, its massive shadow falling across the planet's surface like an eclipse. From the command deck, Orion observed the world below, once lush and vibrant, now largely barren save for the ancient ruins and the rebel encampment surrounding them. They've fortified the old Vidranian temple complex, reported Lyra, studying tactical displays. Governor Malus appears to be using it as her headquarters. Our forces can bombard from orbit or deploy ground troops for precision elimination. Orion studied the ruins with unusual intensity. No orbital strikes. I will lead the ground assault myself. Shock rippled through the command crew. The Eternal Emperor hadn't personally entered combat in over 1,000 years. Your eternity, Lyra protested. The risk is non-existent. Orion cut her off. I cannot die, Commander, or have you forgotten? Preparations moved swiftly. Within hours, Imperial dropships descended toward Vedra's surface, carrying elite soldiers and the Emperor himself. Rebel defenses opened fire, but the outcome seemed predetermined. No mortal force could stand against the full might of the Immortal Empire. As Orion's ship touched down amidst the chaos of battle, he felt an unusual sensation, anticipation, perhaps even anxiety. The ruins of the Vidranian civilization rose before him, massive stone structures covered in intricate carvings and mysterious symbols. Secure a path to the central temple, he ordered Lyra and her squadron. I will confront Malus personally. Fighting intensified as they approached the ancient heart of the ruins. Rebel soldiers fought with surprising determination, many singing what sounded like fragments of the lullaby as they faced Imperial forces. The melody seemed to spread among them, growing stronger as Orion neared the central temple. Then, as he ascended the final staircase toward the temple entrance, the music swelled from within, no longer a simple lullaby, but a full choral arrangement, voices harmonizing in that ancient tongue he somehow understood. The lyrics spoke of remembrance, of mortality embraced, of power surrendered for the sake of true living. Orion faltered mid-step, a wave of dizziness washing over him. For the first time in millennia, he felt physical weakness, a trembling in his limbs, a racing of his heart, sensations long forgotten. Your eternity! Lyra moved to support him, alarm evident in her voice. Continue, he commanded, though his voice lacked its usual authority. I must see this through. The central chamber of the temple opened before them, a vast circular space with a domed ceiling depicting celestial patterns. In the center stood not Governor Malus as expected, but a simple cradle, rocking gently in time with the lullaby that now filled the air completely. As Orion approached the cradle, the immortal soldiers behind him began to collapse one by one, overcome by some invisible force. Only Lyra remained standing, though she too seemed affected, tears streaming down her face as the music resonated through her. What is happening? She whispered, her weapon lowering involuntarily. Orion didn't answer, his attention fixed on the cradle, which he now saw contained not an infant, but a glowing orb of pure light, pulsing in rhythm with the music. As he reached toward it, memories flooded his consciousness, not just fragments, but a complete life he had forgotten. A childhood on ancient Earth, parents whose faces he could suddenly recall with perfect clarity, the lullaby, sung by his mother each night, his rise to power, his discovery of the immortality technology, his gradual loss of humanity as centuries passed, and a choice, a terrible, momentous choice made eons ago, to sacrifice his mortal soul for eternal rule. As his fingertips touched the orb, Orion's body convulsed. The Emperor fell to his knees, immortal power draining from him visibly, his form shifting between youthful and ancient as the lullaby reached its crescendo. Before him materialized a spectral image, himself as a child. Innocent eyes regarding him with neither judgment nor mercy. "You've forgotten how to live," spoke the child self. "You've forgotten how to end." Orion, trembling, looked up at the apparition of his former self. "What must I do?" "Choose again," replied the child. "This time, choose differently." In that moment, surrounded by the ruins of an ancient civilization and the echoes of a forgotten lullaby, Emperor Orion made his choice. Rising unsteadily to his feet, he removed his imperial crown and placed it in the empty cradle. "I abdicate," he announced, his voice cracking with newfound mortality. "The eternal empire ends today." The temple trembled, stone dust raining from the ancient ceiling. The orb of light expanded suddenly, enveloping Orion completely before dissipating into countless particles that scattered throughout the chamber like stardust. When the light faded, Orion remained, changed. The ageless perfection was gone, replaced by the features of a middle-aged man, lines of experience etched into a face that could now age again. Lyra stared in disbelief. "Your eternity, what have you done?" "I am not eternal," he replied simply. "Not anymore. And perhaps I never truly was." News of Emperor Orion's abdication spread across the galaxies at faster-than-light speed, creating precisely the chaos the Council of Immortality had feared. Planetary systems declared independence, vassal princes and princesses scrambled to claim imperial authority, and the once unified empire fractured into competing territories almost overnight. In the imperial palace, the council attempted to maintain order, declaring Orion's abdication a temporary spiritual journey rather than a permanent surrender of power. Few believed them, especially when reports circulated of the emperor's transformed appearance. Meanwhile, Orion himself departed Vedra aboard a small, unmarked vessel, accompanied only by the loyal but confused Lyra and the sound collector Eowyn, who had arrived on the planet shortly after the confrontation in the temple. "Where will you go?" Lyra asked as they left Vedran orbit, watching the Imperial fleet dissolve into disarray without their eternal leader. "To find answers," Orion replied, studying star charts of regions he hadn't personally visited in thousands of years. Beginning with Nebula 4. The journey to Nebula 4 took several weeks, during which Orion experienced mortal life anew, the need for regular sleep, the pleasure of food eaten for sustenance rather than ceremony, the gradual awakening of emotions long suppressed by immortal detachment. Lyra watched this transformation with fascination. The being she had served for centuries was becoming someone new before her eyes, someone vulnerable yet strangely more alive than the eternal emperor had ever been. "Do you regret it?" she asked one evening as they observed the purple-hued nebula growing larger in their view screen. "Giving up eternity?" Orion considered the question carefully. "I regret the years I spent not truly living," he finally answered. "Immortality became a prison rather than a liberation. I ruled galaxies but forgot how it felt to simply exist within them." When they arrived at Nebula 4, they found not the advanced civilization Orion remembered, but a world in early industrial development. The natives regarded their unusual visitors with caution but not hostility, especially when Eowyn communicated their peaceful intentions through music, a universal language even across species. "We seek someone who preserves ancient songs," Orion explained to the planetary elders, "particularly lullabies from long-destroyed Earth." The elders conferred briefly before one stepped forward. "You speak of Selene, the keeper of lost melodies. She lives in solitude among the crystal formations in our northern hemisphere." The journey to find Selene took them through breathtaking landscapes, floating islands connected by bridges of living vines, forests where plants communicated through musical tones, valleys where crystal formations naturally amplified sound into complex harmonies. They found her dwelling built into the side of a crystal mountain, its structure designed to capture and preserve sound waves for centuries. Celine herself proved unexpected. Not a native of Nebula 4, but a human woman of indeterminate age. Her silver hair cascading past her waist, her eyes reflecting wisdom accumulated across eons. "I've been expecting you," she said simply when Orion approached her dwelling. "Though I confess, I thought it would take you fewer millennia to remember." Orion stared at the woman, recognition dawning slowly. "You. I know you." Celine smiled, the expression transforming her aged face into one that sparked deeper memories. "You were my charge, once. Long ago, on Earth. Before you became emperor, before you forgot your beginning." "My nursemaid," Orion whispered, childhood memories crystallizing. "You sang to me." "I did." Celine gestured for them to enter her dwelling. Inside, the walls were lined with crystal recording devices, each containing sounds from across the galaxies and throughout time. "And I've preserved all the songs of Earth, including yours, waiting for the day you would remember enough to seek them." That evening, seated in Celine's dwelling as she prepared a simple meal, Orion learned the truth of his origins, not the mythologized version taught throughout the Empire, but the humble reality of a human child, born on Earth during humanity's first expansion to the stars. "Your parents were xenomusicologists," Celine explained. "They studied how different species communicated through sound. You inherited their sensitivity to music, their ability to understand languages through tonal patterns." "And the immortality?" Orion asked. "The Empire?" Celine's expression darkened. "That came later. After Earth faced catastrophe, after you lost your family, you discovered the technology on an ancient world, a means to extend life indefinitely, but at a terrible cost." "My humanity," Orion concluded quietly. "The technology required suppressing memory, emotion, all that makes existence meaningful rather than merely endless. You built an empire on the premise that eternal rule brought eternal peace, but forgot why peace mattered in the first place." Lyra, who had listened silently until now, spoke up. "But why did the lullaby break through, after so many millennia?" Celine turned to the Guardian with a gentle smile. "Because music bypasses the intellectual centers of the brain. It speaks directly to the emotional core, the part of Orion that the immortality technology could suppress but never fully eliminate. His mother's lullaby was encoded in his very cells, waiting to be awakened." "And you preserved it all this time," Orion said, wonder in his voice. "Why?" "Because I made a promise." Celine replied simply, "To a child who once asked me if he would remember how to be human when he grew up. I told him I would keep his songs safe until he needed them again." In the days that followed, Orion immersed himself in the sounds of his forgotten childhood, not just his mother's lullaby, but playground chants, festival music, the ambient sounds of ancient Earth. Each recording unlocked more memories, reconstructing the humanity he had sacrificed for power. Meanwhile, reports reached them of the Empire's continuing disintegration. Without its immortal emperor, the artificial cohesion binding thousands of worlds together had dissolved. Some regions descended into conflict, while others formed new alliances based on shared interests rather than imperial dictate. "You could return," Lyra suggested after bringing the latest news. "Many worlds would still accept your rule, even in your changed state." Orion shook his head. "The age of emperors should end. These worlds deserve to find their own paths forward." "Then what will you do?" asked Eowyn, who had been cataloging Celine's vast sound collection with reverent enthusiasm. Orion had been considering this question for days. Now, watching Celine teach local children to sing Earth melodies, an idea began to form. "Music connected civilizations before empires did," he said slowly. "Perhaps it can do so again." With Celine's blessing and guidance, Orion began teaching what he had relearned, not just the melodies themselves, but their contexts, their emotional resonances, their power to preserve cultural memory across generations. He started with the children of Nebula 4, then expanded as word spread of the former emperor's new vocation. Delegations arrived from nearby worlds, curious about the transformed Immortal who now shared songs instead of commands. Among them came former imperial officials, vassal lords, even members of the Council of Immortality, some seeking to understand Orion's transformation, others hoping to persuade him to reclaim his throne. To all, Orion offered the same response. The age of immortal rule had ended. The future belonged to those who could embrace both the joy and the inevitable conclusion of mortal existence. As months passed, a new network emerged, not an empire built on military might and eternal domination, but a cultural exchange centered on preserved melodies and shared stories. Ships that once carried troops now transported musicians and cultural ambassadors. Planets that had been strategic military outposts became centers for artistic collaboration. Orion himself established what became known as the Galactic Conservatory of Forgotten Sounds, an institution dedicated to collecting, preserving, and sharing music from every civilization, with particular emphasis on lullabies and childhood songs that carried cultural memories across generations. Not everyone embraced this new approach. Several former vassal worlds formed a military alliance determined to resurrect the empire's structure, if not its immortal leader. They launched campaigns to restore order, attacking worlds that had joined Orion's cultural network. During one such attack on Nebula 4, as residents sheltered in Selene's crystal caverns, Orion faced a moment of truth. Imperial warships, once his own, appeared in the skies, threatening destruction unless the planet surrendered. "You could use the immortality technology again," Lyra suggested, her warrior instincts rising to the surface. "Just temporarily, to defend these people." Orion considered this, feeling the temptation of reclaiming that power, if only for a righteous cause. But Selene placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Power always justifies itself," she reminded him, "even when the cause seems just." Instead of reaching for immortality, Orion reached for music. Using the crystal amplification system Selene had built, he broadcast the lullaby, not just his mother's version, but variations from 100 worlds, harmonizing into a single, powerful melody that spread across the attacking fleet. The effect wasn't immediate or universal. Some ships continued their assault, but others faltered as crews, many former Imperial citizens who had heard fragments of the lullaby since childhood, experienced the same awakening Orion had undergone. Within hours, the attack dissolved into confusion, then retreat, as ship after ship broke formation. In the aftermath, as Nebula 4 assessed its minimal damage, Orion received an unexpected visitor, Governor Malus of Vedra, whose rebellion had catalyzed his transformation months earlier. "I came to see if the rumors were true," she said, studying his now visibly aging face. "The immortal emperor, teaching children to sing." "Not an emperor anymore," Orion corrected gently. "Just a collector of forgotten songs." Malus smiled. "The empire continues to fracture, you know. Some regions prosper in newfound independence, others struggle. Many still fight in your name, either to restore you or to prevent your return." "And Vedra?" "We've joined with neighboring systems to form a democratic alliance," she replied. "Still small, still learning how governance works without imperial dictate, but growing stronger. We've incorporated music into our legislative sessions. It helps maintain emotional connection even during difficult negotiations." This news pleased Orion more than any imperial conquest ever had. That's all I could hope for, worlds finding their own harmonies. Over the following years, Orion continued his work, watching with satisfaction as the cultural network expanded across the former empire. He aged naturally now, his hair graying, lines deepening around his eyes, changes he embraced as signs of a life properly lived. The Council of Immortality made one final attempt to convince him to return, sending a delegation with the preserved technology that could restore his eternal existence. "The galaxies need stable leadership," argued Counselor Vex. "Already, conflicts arise between newly independent systems. Your cultural exchange is admirable, but insufficient to maintain peace." Orion listened respectfully before responding. Peace maintained through domination was never true peace, only the illusion of it. These worlds must learn to resolve conflicts themselves, to find common ground without imperial intervention. And if they fail, pressed Seraphine, if war consumes what you built over millennia, then they will rebuild. Orion replied simply, as all civilizations do. But they will build something of their own choosing, not my design. He declined their offer, suggesting instead that the council members themselves consider relinquishing immortality to experience life's full spectrum again. Few accepted this invitation, though some, including Seraphine, eventually did. As decades passed, Orion's reputation transformed from fearsome eternal emperor to beloved cultural figure, the singing sage, as many called him. His conservatory of forgotten sounds established branches on hundreds of worlds, each preserving and teaching the musical heritage of their regions. Lyra remained by his side, no longer as a guardian, but as a friend and eventually partner, her own warrior nature softening through exposure to the emotional power of music. Together they traveled extensively, documenting songs from civilizations at the furthest reaches of what had once been Orion's empire. Eowyn became the conservatory's chief archivist, developing new technologies to preserve sound with perfect fidelity across generations. Under his guidance, the institution created the largest repository of cultural sound recordings in known space. Selene, whose own extended lifespan eventually reached its natural conclusion, departed peacefully after ensuring her collection of Earth melodies would be preserved forever. Her final words to Orion acknowledged the completion of her promise. You remembered how to be human again. On what would have been his 120th birthday, a mere blink compared to his immortal reign, yet rich with more authentic experience than millennia of eternal rule, Orion gathered his closest companions on Nebula 4 for a celebration. Students from the conservatory performed melodies from 1,000 worlds, including, of course, the lullaby that had awakened him from immortality's dream. Do you ever miss it? Lyra asked quietly as they watched the performance. The power, the empire, the endless life? Orion, his face now deeply lined, his movements slower but his eyes brighter than they had ever been during his immortal reign, considered the question. I missed the potential of what it could have been, he admitted. But I confused longevity with legacy. True immortality isn't living forever, it's creating something that outlives you. He gestured toward the performers, toward the audience of diverse beings from across the galaxies, all connected through preserved melodies. This will continue long after I'm gone, not because I commanded it, but because it resonates with something fundamental in all sentient beings, the need to remember, to connect, to pass cultural memory from one generation to the next. In the years that followed, as Orion's mortal life approached its natural conclusion, the former Eternal Empire continued its transformation. Some regions formed democratic alliances, others chose different governance models, all finding their own paths forward. Conflicts arose and resolved. Borders shifted. New civilizations emerged from the remnants of imperial outposts. But throughout these changes, one constant remained: the network of cultural exchange Orion had established, connecting diverse worlds through shared appreciation of preserved melodies. The lullaby that had awakened him spread across the galaxies, adapted into countless variations while maintaining its essential message. Remember who you were before eternal days. When Orion finally passed, peacefully and surrounded by loved ones, representatives from thousands of worlds gathered to commemorate not the immortal emperor he had been, but the mortal teacher he had become. The ceremony concluded with a galaxy-wide moment of song, not silence, as beings across the former empire simultaneously sang the lullaby that had transformed their history. His epitaph, inscribed in the crystal archives of the conservatory he had founded, made no mention of conquest or immortality or imperial glory. It contained only a simple truth he had rediscovered. To truly live is to embrace both beginning and end. The most beautiful melodies require both. And across the galaxies, children continued to be sung to sleep with variations of the forgotten lullaby. carrying forward the memory of an emperor who discovered that the most profound immortality comes not from endless existence, but from being remembered in the songs of those who follow.